Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Thank you. When Ronson asked me 4 months ago if I wanted to do this, I asked him, what do you want me to say? And he says, you know, the Shine Award was something that you're very passionate about. This is the first iLEAD conference, so we want to give you this opportunity to talk to the students the same way you talked to the students about 3 or 4 years ago. So, good morning, Prof, all my colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I put up a title called Leadership at the Peak. And I asked myself, how was I going to present this? And I said, okay, why don't it be just like a class where, you know, the teacher will tell you the first thing you should know, and the second thing you should know, and the third thing you should know. And since you're all tuned to your exams next week, I thought, okay, let's do it like, what's rule number 1? What's rule number 2? And I've got 40 rules, if time permits me, to go through what I believe would be 40 rules I would like to follow as a leader. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay, so at the end, I want you to kind of tell me which of these rules excite you the most. But I want to start by first introducing you to this book. The book was written by Daniel Pink. And this book talks about why, in the years to come, in the decades to come, right-brainers will rule over the left-brainers. For those of you who may not be familiar, right brain activity is... They don't like me to come there. Right brain activity is largely concerned with the softer side of things, the creative side of things. And they say left-handers are right-brainers. I'm left-handed, by the way. Now, the left-brainers are the more rational. They tend to be a little bit more hardwired. But Daniel Pink predicts 6 key skills. It's a little small, but I'm going to have these slides put on PDF and sent off to all of you. But Daniel Pink predicts 6 key skills that he says employees of the future must possess. So let's start with the first one. And I'm not going to go through all of them in detail, but the first one is design. Daniel predicts that when every country can build a university, every country can build a car, when everyone can produce a book, every product is going to succeed or fail based on how nicely and functionally it is designed. The very design of the iPhone is what possibly killed Nokia and Ericsson. If any of you even know that such a phone company was once a giant in the world. The second prediction Daniel made was story. You, more than any of us older ones in the room, know that we live in the information age. Every day, every minute of the day, we're all hooked onto this thing. And there's WhatsApp, there's messages, there's chats, there's Instagram, there are pictures coming. Everyone who is doing something worth sharing is sending it to you. So because we are bombarded with so much, people cannot remember too much. And therefore, the best way to make people remember is to tell a story. Remember when you were the child and mom told you about the 3 little pigs, and you just looked at mom wide-eyed wonder and just listened. At the heart of every human being is a child. While the internet and the laptops and the phones have overtaken our lives, we still like a good story. So, the best storytellers would likely be the most captivating leaders of tomorrow. The third is symphony. I like this one because symphony is about how do we connect so many different things together. So when you study or when you're working, let's talk about your studies, right? You know, when you study, you have so many subjects to study. You have many, about 4 or 5 subjects a semester, and then you've got another semester with another 4 or 5 subjects, and another semester, and this goes on for 3 or 4 years. And when you work, there is this company you work in, but there's finance, there's marketing, there's human resource, there's purchasing, there's operations, there's all these different parts of an organization. The leader of tomorrow is able to see it like a symphony. That means how each one interplays with the other. And the ones that will not succeed tomorrow are the ones who are like a horse, wearing blinkers, and can only see what's ahead of them. They can't see what's around them. Does that make sense? Symphony. The fourth is empathy. Daniel says, the more you can feel, not think, the more you can feel for someone, whether it's your staff, your parents, your friend, the more you can connect with another human being, the greater a leader you become. The fifth is play. He says the future belongs to employees who can balance between work and just having plain fun. And finally, another one of my favorite, and this is why we developed Shine, because the future belongs to people who know why they do what they do. Are you doing this because your mom asked you to? Are you here because your dad wants you to be here? Are you here because somebody said you want to get Shine, you got to be here, you got no choice? Or are you here because you see this as a part of what you want to become in the future? This book is available in our library. I don't get any commission from promoting this book. It's a very thin, simple book. Daniel Pink, A Whole New World. So let me start. Oh, I didn't know I had all these ducks. Ooh, la, nice. Okay. Quack, quack. All right. Rule number 1. Rule number 1, get emotionally involved. If you want to enjoy your work and your life, remember play, right? If you want to enjoy your work and your life, make sure your work is your life. Does that make sense? If your work, you know, when I grew up, people told me, cannot mix work and your life. That good employees, when they come to work, is only work. And when they go home, they cannot think about work. The problem today is people take their work home and forget to live. So don't confuse people who take their work home and forget to live, or bring their lives to work and forget to work. What I'm saying is, can you possibly make your life your work? And when you make your life your work, you are emotionally involved in it. I heard just now Benji say something about someone wanting to be an entrepreneur. You know what? Make that your life. Get emotionally involved in it. And that in trying to separate things, I think you're trying too hard not to be human. Does that make sense? Second rule. Don't ever imagine that you can do things alone. Even in marriage, you can't. No, don't help me. I'm going to get married myself. Right? I mean, who are you going to get married to? So, the world today, especially today, is all about how, in Malay we use this word, bergandeng bahu. Right? And in English, it's all about how we maximize and we optimize the people around us. So the point I want to make is that it's not just realizing that teamwork is important, it is realizing how a team actually works. There's loads of stuff on the internet about teamwork. And I'm going to share some stuff with you. Sorry. First, there are many versions to this, but let's begin with the first one. You know what makes a team work? Different people. The problem when we try to form a team is we are looking for people that look like us, think like us, behave like us. And you know what? If your team is made up of people who look, think, and behave like you, the team is likely not to go very far. So the first thing that makes the team is diversity, is variety. In your team, do you have somebody who tends to usually disagree with you? He's called the cynic. You must have him on the team. Because if you're the visionary, always thinking of great ideas, you need someone to kind of test and see whether those ideas are going to work. And then, in your team, you need the organizer. This is the guy, don't ask him to be visionary. But he says, so what do you want to do? Oh, you want to do this? Right, I tell you what, here's what you do first, here's what you do next, here's what you do. That's your organizer. And in your team, you have the doer. Don't ask the doer to be the visionary. So when you're forming a project team for an assignment in class, or when you own your own company, look for people who add value, people who are not what you are. Because if everyone thinks, feels, behave like you, then why do you need them? You have yourself, right? Does that make sense? So, here are the people you're going to find in a team. Every team is like a serial on TV. There's drama. There's the complainer in your team. Am I right? There's always the complainer in your team. But there's a way to manage the complainer. Read Jim Warner's book called Drama-Free Office. It tells you how to tackle the complainer, how to tackle the cynic. The cynic is always the one that says, Benji, are you sure? I think you're crazy. This is not going to work, Benji. But how do you deal with him? Do you expel him from the team, or do you manage him in the team? Then you have the controller. He's always trying to be in charge of everything. And he doesn't want to let go. And then you have the caretaker. Oh, you really are. Okay, you're busy, right? You got assignments. Okay, I do for you. Right? The guy who's always taking care of everybody. He's probably the most difficult to manage because he's so nice. He's so nice. How to tell him not to? Right? I could move to rule number 3 before I run out of time. Rule number 3, if you want to do something, Steve Jobs, before he built that Apple empire of his, he says, let's make a dent in the universe. So when you want to set goals, don't be afraid. Set big, hairy, you know, hairy and scary, audacious goals. Or Vern Harnish in his book, The Rockefeller Habits, calls this the BHAG. So I ask you, what's your BHAG in life? What's that big, hairy, audacious goal? It's so audacious you didn't even think you could do it. But because you set it so high, you're very, very likely to get near it. Does that make sense? Have effective meetings and have fun. I think this is important because meetings become not so fun when people don't know how decisions are made. There are 4 styles of decision making. Directive. This is what the general tells the soldier he has to do, right? And in times of crisis, we make directive decisions. So it's not wrong to make directive decisions. But you don't make directive decisions every day, because after a while, your people will say, well, since you're so smart and making all the decisions, why do you need us here? The second style of decision is consultative. I decide, but I ask all of you what you think, and then I decide. Most presidents and prime ministers and CEOs make decisions consultatively. A little more challenging is consensual decision making. That means everybody must agree. You know when it's good to use consensual decision making? So where do we eat? All must agree we go Chinese today. That's consensual decision making. And the last is delegative decision making. You leave it to people to decide. The point I want to make is meetings get fun when people know your style of leadership and people know which style you're going to use to decide. There is no right style. There are popular styles, but there are no right styles. The style depends on the context. This is one of my favorites. And this is one of the biggest challenges leaders have. Will my follower become better than me? And the answer is yes. Because only if the follower is better than you can you move on in life. Many people hold on to their positions because of fear of losing power. But when people become better, and if you have a good boss, then your boss will look at you and says, I think he's ready to move. So if you want to move in the corporate world, make your followers better than you. And then let them make mistakes, but take the blame for it. Don't let them make mistakes and then blame them for it. Because your followers see you as an umbrella above their heads. That when it rains and storms, you're there to protect them. And the more you give them air cover, the more they respect you, the more they are willing to do more for you. Does that make sense? This has got to do with, I told you, surround yourself with people who are unlike you. And the reality is, you cannot expect your team to work, think, behave, talk just like you. Some of them won't talk as well as you. Some of them won't think like you.
And I think the best way to move forward is to respect the fact that every person in your team is different and focus on what is good about them, not what is bad. Because the way the human mind works, you see, the human mind, the human being is animalistic in its basal existence. You know, it's not the most popular thing to say on a Saturday morning that we are all animals. But because we are animals, animals have what we call the survival instinct, the need to survive and to procreate. If you read biology, or if you read any philosophy books, the greatest philosophers tell you that the reason for birth is to reproduce. And to reproduce and protect the species, animals develop a protective behavior, a survival instinct. And throughout our lives, from the day we are born, we have got no survival instinct naturally. The parents reinforce that. Hey, don't touch that. You're going to burn your hands, right? And we always grow up to protect ourselves. And when we see something that's not like us, like a tiger seeing a lion, or when one human being sees another, it's always the defense first. And it's difficult to accept someone, something unlike ourselves. It's a journey that can be very difficult sometimes. But if you want to move on in life, you want to be an effective leader, you have to take the good and the bad. There will not be a moment when everything is good. That's foolish thinking. We've done that, we've done that. Oh, I love this one. Encourage people. Give credit. Praise. Praise is very un-Asian. It's very un-Asian. I don't mean to stereotype, but Asian culture believes that the more you praise someone, the more the head becomes very big. Right? And all of you would remember Jackie Chan and Jaden Smith in Karate Kid. And how Jackie Chan asked him, take out your jacket, put back your jacket, take out your jacket. Remember that scene? Yeah. Did Jaden even know what the hell Jackie was trying to do? That's Asian culture. And in Asian culture, the boss will say, okay, you do this, you do this, you do this, you do this. I tell you what, I tell you, you do lah. Then behind their back, it says, actually this stuff are not bad. No? They never tell the stuff. But somehow our natural instinct is to tell others how good people are. So, how many of you have heard of the Hedo experiment? Anyone? Good morning. How many of you have heard of the Hedo experiment? You have? Wonderful. Those of you who didn't, Google it. It's all over the internet, and it's not something very new. Masaru Emoto actually carried out the Hedo experiment to prove that physical matter has its own ability to react to positive and negative energy. So what he did was he spoke to a glass of water. And to one glass, he said all the wonderful things. I love you, water. You nourish me. You taste so nice. And every day he would only say nice things to this glass of water. And when he froze them into ice crystals and analyzed those crystals, that's the picture of love. The crystals somehow appeared very well shaped and structured. And to another glass of water, and he did this with rice, he did this with so many different things. He used rock music versus, symphony, orchestra kind of music and all that stuff. And to another glass of water, in Malay we say, dia maki hamun terus. You're colorless, useless liquid. I hate you. And when he analyzed those crystals, they didn't look as well shaped and structured as the one that received love. Ladies and gentlemen, the human body is 70% water. So when you shout, scream, insult people, imagine the effect of the negative energy upon the human body, upon the water embedded in the cells within it. The point I'm making is not that you don't shout. The point I'm making is the more you praise, the more likely that the behavior is repeated by the staff. The less you praise, then the cells turn up like the not so nice water crystals. Rule number 9. Okay. I think in this day and age, where anyone can buy technology, know-how, anyone with money can have the same nice-looking buildings, the one difference that will differentiate one organization from another will be people. And not just people, the right people for the right job. And that there are stories after stories, case studies after case studies of organizations that changed for the worse when people within them changed. And organizations that became much better when people within them were better people with the right fit. Remember what Daniel Pink said about the 6 key skills of the future, and one of them was play. And the more you're able to find fun in everything you do, the more you're able to connect better with people around you. And hence, celebrate. Celebrate not with an annual dinner at the end of the year or a staff trip at the end of the year, but celebrate every other achievement of the team. And that the more, remember this has got to do with praise and recognition as well. This is something I have to keep reminding myself. Keep track of everything you do and say. Because people remember the not so good things that you've said. And that's quite a natural tendency for a lot of people. So be careful of what you say, when and where, and to whom. And when you work in teams, and when you sense that there is friction or there is some kind of tension, don't ignore it. Address it. Those of you who are in pods will probably know that there is one part of the pods session where you do what is called issues clearing. How many of you are in pods? Wow, I hope to see the whole hall put up your hands next year. And issues clearing is a time when, without any fear, you clear issues with people. Ladies and gentlemen, people work for people. And I'm sure the speakers coming after me will keep emphasizing that point to all of you. I think this is pretty straightforward. Train your people to come with solutions. And tell them that the way in which they are going to be judged is not so much by their ability to highlight problems to you, but to come to you with solutions for them. This is one of my favorites. When you're the leader leading, give your staff the impression that they know more than you. And in many cases, they do know more than you. But there are times they don't. But let them speak and express their thoughts. And therefore, you don't always have to have the last word. It's okay to lose sometimes. And let them walk away thinking that they won this one. And this is what I meant. Cheong Ju-yong is the guy who said this. And he started Hyundai Corporation. And he said it very, very easily. He said, you know, I'm very good at what I do, but the one thing I'm not very good at is marketing. And so he went out and he hired the best marketeer. So as you lead organizations or as you lead your own companies, find people that can do things perhaps you're not very good at. Because the human natural tendency is to find people who, you know, in Chinese we say can keng with you lah. You know, can get along, they eat the same food you eat, they think like you, they behave like you. And if you don't have that much needed diversity in your group and the much needed expertise that you don't have yourself, you're very likely to be all thinking and doing the same things and often the wrong things. This is another thing that's very difficult for Asians because of our culture. And we have this natural tendency to overly respect the boss. So when the boss walks up to you and says, Gobin, you know, I need you to do this, and you know, I need this report and I need it by tomorrow, Gobin's tendency is, okay, sure, no problem. He has absolutely no idea what I want. He just knows I need a report. And I think performance failures can be traced back mostly to the non-clarity in terms of what was expected of them. When I say this to a lot of Asians, they look at me incredulously and they say, you're crazy. You want me to lose my job? Because the tendency is the more you respect and bow down to the authority of the leader, the better a follower you are. But the reality is this very same leader that you bowed down and showed respect is going to come after you if you don't give him the results that he had expected from you. So I think clarifying expectations, and if you do a coaching program, you would actually be taught a very methodical way to clarify expectations, set performance contracts, and be able to produce exactly and perhaps surpass what your boss had actually asked you to do. This is another one that Asians tend to not perform as well as your Western counterparts. And it is in fighting for what you think your staff should have. That at the end of the day, if your staff have all the hygiene factors around them to perform their jobs, they would be very, very motivated to continue to work for you. And that a good leader makes sure that all the resources required for the staff to perform are made available to them. I think I've talked about this, that each member of your team is different. And I'll speak a little bit more about it in one of my other rules. We've touched on this as well. You need to know when to let it go. that you've got to sometimes allow for the smaller things that upset you to just pass and focus on those bigger things that matter more. Oh, this is one of my favorites. It's probably why we survive as long as we survive. Don't cut corners. In all my years, I found that there are staff who can speak very well. They promise you the sun and the moon, and they say, yeah, no problem, boss. Tomorrow morning you come, sure, done already the job, no problem. They can't really deliver, but they're very good at promising. They cut corners, they take shortcuts. They're not authentic in their behaviors. And I found that many of these are rolling stones. They move from one job to another over the years. They hardly are able to actually perform consistently in a particular job and be productive. Another one of my favorites, whatever you think you've planned and is going to happen, may not. And therefore, for every plan you design, think of alternatives. Not one, but perhaps two. I want to tell you this story that many, many years ago, when I was working in a college, and this college was taken over by the present group, that the present family that owns the group. The college took over the group. And I used to be a senior staff, an academic staff in this college. And when the group that took over this college, they sent this very interesting gentleman to come as a representative of the new owners. And he wasn't the most pleasant guy. I mean, he would always come up to me and ask me for loads of files and documents and stuff. And it was quite irritating. I was 27, 28 years old then. But the one thing, thank God, I didn't tell him what I thought. Because 3 years later, he became my boss. And the point is, throughout our life, in your university today, in your family, in your circle of family and friends, and in your jobs tomorrow, whatever you think about the person, hold your tongue. Because you never know how this person will menjelma kembali, will reappear in your life. Perhaps as your wife, perhaps as your business partner, perhaps as your colleague in the office. The world is indeed a strange place. That what goes round, yes, I think you can finish that yourself. Take command. As leaders, there are times when your leadership requires you to take charge and make decisions. Remember the 4 styles of decision making we spoke about? There are times when you have to take charge. Yes, the cynic in the team would have said what they needed to say. The complainer would have said what they needed to say. But the buck stops with you. And there are moments when you need to assert that you are in command and you need to take charge to deliver the expected results. And the one thing, I think with the younger generation, that's a lot easier because you're more connected with technology and more in touch with sources of information. But whatever happens or whatever you're good at today kind of becomes not so relevant a week, a month, a year, 5 years from now. And that the only way, you may be the best at what you do, but only for that moment, ladies and gentlemen. You have to believe that you can only be good for now. Because if you want to be good for tomorrow and next year, you better learn something new. Because someone else who knows more than you is going to come along. And therefore, your ability to unlearn and relearn is a very, very important skill of the future. I'm going to tell you another story. And this was a very, very interesting story. We had a professor in this university. And he was a very, very close friend of mine. And he was the only professor we had in our hospitality school. So, quite an important person. And he worked very hard. He was retired from a public university, and he worked very hard, and so very hard, to do the things that were expected of him. One Sunday morning, he was about to come to work on a Sunday morning. So he went to shave. He had a heart attack, and he died. 3 weeks later, the university started looking for another professor. The point is, in any organization, you are dispensable. So there are people who hold on to that position, that post, that title, and think that's what life is all about. It is not. If you think you're indispensable, tonight or on your way home, visit a graveyard. It's filled with thousands of people who were once very useful, but now no longer. And therefore, look after yourself. It's the only thing you've got to call your own. And in many literature, even your children is now being talked about as not being your own, because they have their own life. It's their life, right? So, ladies and gentlemen, recognize when you're stressed. Performance. I think it's good to get feedback on your performance. And I'm sure you'll give me feedback on mine when I'm done. I think there are many things, especially when you're younger, there are many things you want to do. Many things. And if you ask me what my advice is, choose the one or two things that you're really good at, or that you really need to do at that moment, and just focus on that. And you'll probably get far more satisfaction and results by focusing on what you need to do. I'm going to start skipping because they've started flashing cards at me, right? I think some of the other themes are going to be fairly similar. Your team wants to know whether you're going to fight for them or not. I've seen managers that come into meetings, and when things don't go right, they just blame all the staff, their staff, for it. I've seen managers who come into meetings and allow their staff to get fried in public rather than have themselves face those questions. And I think your staff will respect you even more if they know they have you to count on. I think you know this. It doesn't pay to play politics. Another one of my favorites, and it's got to do with the impermanence. I'm the Deputy Vice-Chancellor of Taylor's University. But you know what? Somebody decided that I should be one. It's not mine. Tomorrow, I could wake up and this is no longer mine. And therefore, life becomes a lot simpler when we accept what we do from a position of a steward and not the owner. And therefore, I'd like to introduce that perhaps leadership should eventually become stewardship. And that we are in charge of what we do for a moment in time. And our time will finish, and someone else will take over. And therefore, here's another idea I'd like you to think about. That perhaps we shouldn't be too concerned about what we achieved while we were there, but what happens when we are no longer there. And there are thousands of case studies of organizations that went south after the leader left. And there are leaders who then turn around and say, you know what, masa dulu, when I was there, these things don't happen, you know. So now we have a former prime minister saying the same thing. Right? So the question of leadership and stewardship is a very, very interesting question. Those of you who follow Manchester United, are you impressed with Sir Alex? Just a question. I love Manchester United. It's the club I support. But I'd like to ask, what did Sir Alex leave behind? His legacy for sure, but a winning team, perhaps not. Well, I think we've covered quite a bit of this about, I'm going to give you a little bit of time to ask me questions. So I think we spoke about the fact that there are so many things you're going to do. And I think life becomes easier when you choose which ones really matter to you and which ones, let go lah. Just let go. It becomes so much easier when you can do that. Rule number 40. When everything is over, go home. Home, ladies and gentlemen, is where they can't replace you. Remember, at the office, you can be replaced in days, in weeks. But home, to your dad, you're the only son. Can't replace the son. And for you, your dad's the only one. You can't replace him. It gives you, I know I'm being a bit dramatic, but I'm trying to get you to have that perspective. But here's the other thing I like. When you go home today, start dreaming. APJ Abdul Kalam was the poorest of the poor family and rose to become the president of India. He is a rocket scientist and then became the president. And he says, dream is not that you see in your sleep, but is something that does not let you sleep. And I want to end by letting you watch this video. Could you click that, please, for me? How many of you, how many of you know who he is? Jack Ma. Everybody knows Jack Ma. So, I was asked to talk about leadership at the peak. So what happens when you are at the peak, like Jack Ma? Now, I can't do half of what he has done, but I'd like you to just listen to what he has to say. Did you put the sound? Have you got the sound? Okay.
Don't worry. Any mistake is an income, is a wonderful revenue for you. So I told myself and told my young people, before 20 years old, be a good student. When you do entrepreneur, just learn some experience. Before 30 years old, follow somebody. Go to a small company. Normally in a big company, it is good to learn processing. You are a part of a big machine. But when you go to a small company, you learn the passion, you learn the dreams. You learn how to do a lot of things at one time. So before 30 years old, it's not which company you go, it's which boss you follow. It's very important. A good boss teaches you differently. And from 30 to 40 years old, you have to think very clearly, you're working for yourself if you really want to be an entrepreneur. When you're 40 to 50 years old, you have to do all the things that you are good at. Don't try to jump into the new area. It's too late. You may be successful, but the rate of dying is too big. So 40 to 50, think about how can focus on things that you are good at. But when you are 50 to 60 years old, work for the young people. Because young people can do better than you. So rely on them, invest on them, making sure they're good. So when you are over 60 years old, spend time for yourself. On the beach, sunshine, right? It's too late for you to change normally. But this is my advice to the young people. 25 years old, make enough mistakes. Don't worry. You fall, you stand up. You fall, you stand up. Enjoy it. I mean, 25 years old, enjoy the show, enjoy the show.
Okay, thank you. 또 다음 질문 받겠습니다.
26살 예비 창업자.
So, I just want to share these last thoughts that when we speak about leadership, I think even the leader evolves, and Jack said it so well, evolves from the leader you are now to the leader you will be as an executive, ambitious, driven to succeed, to a manager who is very concerned with wanting to get up the ladder, to a leader that eventually transforms himself into a coach. Jack says, you know what, between 40 and 50, just focus on what you're really good at. But when you get to about 50, let the young guys do all the work. Because they can do so many more things than what you can do. And he talks about the whole idea of becoming the coach. And then when you're 50 to 60, you become more of an advisor, a mentor to people. Thank you very much. I think we have time for maybe 2 questions.
Ask your question. Unfortunately, due to time constraints, you only allow 1 question per person. Any questions? Kindly state your name and program as well.
Oh, I was going to say there's so many nice people, nobody wants to ask questions, but go ahead.
Hello, hi, my name is Myra. I'm studying broadcasting. My question is, how do you know when to say yes and how do you know when to say no? Because people tend to make decisions based on emotions and some people make decisions based on logic. So how do you differentiate?
I don't think there's one straight answer of when you can say yes and no, but here's my answer. What's right, what's not right, depends on the values you hold. And one of the things that we're trying to promote in the Shine Award, have you, as a person, written down your personal values in life? What are those things that you so believe a person should be that you are actually that person? So if you're someone that is very passionate, and being passionate is an important value to you, or being open to others is an important value to you, or being respectful to others is an important value to you, you realize that at moments of crisis, at moments when you are really desperate to decide what to do, the answer lies in those values that you have written for yourself. And if you have written your set of values, you just need perhaps 5 minutes to just reflect back and say, based on what I believe, what would I do? So it's about going deeper into yourself, because the answer is there, that the life you've lived, the experiences you've had, have actually formed the values you hold. And the values are going to be the one that almost is going to indicate where the true north is for you. It gives you a sense, okay, this is what I think we all need to do, because that's what I believe we should be doing. Right? Now, management gurus will tell you that you can draw a decision tree, a decision matrix. If I do this, this is going to happen. I think that's the science of it. But finally, when you have that one choice, you have to make a decision. Do I invade Iraq or do I not invade Iraq? I think that becomes a question of the values you hold onto yourself. Anyone else?
We are able to take another question from the floor.
You may also log on to today's meet to ask your question.
All right, thank you very much, everyone. Have a great conference. Thank you.